So listen really careful. Can y'all hear? Now, for all of those who have heard this song, raise your hand. Oh, see, thank you. I'm so glad because I was about to get just a little worried, thinking that I really was a whole lot more lost than I thought I was. Now let's go with this one. Who knows this one? What is it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I thought it was.
Okay. I just had to know.
You just wanted every.
And what it seems like is that about as many people knew Helen Rady as who knew Gaga. That makes me feel a little better. I've got to say.
Or you were just highlighting what terrible taste you have in music.
I'm
I was
sorry.
waiting for the chorus to bust out with
Because I usually end up, that's because I usually am the oldest around, the oldest in the agency, and I tend to be the oldest in most groups like this. But I don't like to feel that I'm like ancient, so you know, trying to find so, here's what we're going to start with. I'm not gonna, y'all are gonna take one of these, pass it around. You can take and pass markers, or crayons, or whatever. Send them on down. Get what you want. I'm going to ask you if you're going to use crayons, you're going to have to share with the rest of the table, so don't keep the whole box. But just grab some crayons and move it on down. Yeah, go with what you're feeling, you know, whatever you're feeling. Because here's what we're going to do. You know, not a hard exercise to do. What you're going to do is you're going to do your intent card. Okay? Then you're going to fold that intent card this way. Okay? You're going to fold it the long way. Because as we go through the sessions, you're going to have different facilitators for each discussion. And they need to know who's in the room with them. It'll make it easier for them. It'll also make it easier for you in terms of being and communicate with each other, starting to recognize faces, getting to know who else is in the room. And so that when you run into each other in the future at other volunteer trainings, activities, at the hospital or wherever, when you see each other, you'll start to recognize faces and names, and so it'll be really helpful. I will tell you that I will try to be very respectful of that. YWCA in the South. And this building was built for us in 1914, but we began in 1887. We were begun by 8 church women who got together and said, these young women are getting off the train in droves every day, coming to the city to find work. They have nowhere to stay. They have no skills. They have nothing. We got to do something. Travelers Aid was started then too. I mean, it all kind of came together. Well, prior to all of that, women were, if you ever get a chance, one of the videos actually on the YouTube, it has a whole section on the Good Wives piece, but the Good Wives instructions are very clear about roles and very much instructive on the only skill sets that women needed to have in order to be successful. And that was at a time when there were husbands who worked and took care of everything. And women's roles were very different, for the most part. War came, men are gone, women have to raise families, and they said, okay, we can do this. I mean, Rosie River, we can do it. By God, we can make it all work. And they stepped up, and all of a sudden there was a new life. So at the same time that they're stepping up and taking care of their own families, they're taking care of the country. It's a very much empowering kind of period. And then the war is over. And the men come home. There's trauma, there's PTSD, there's all the other things that go with that. There's lots of confusion. Women who've been doing everything to take care of everybody are now being told you don't need to do that anymore. And you must not be really good at it. Okay? Well, that was sort of that birth of women going, oh, wait, yeah, I was good at it. Yeah, I do want to keep doing this. And so it was a little bit of the, okay, we're putting you up here, you got to make it work, and yeah, now we don't need you. And the group went, oh no, I'm in now. You know, got my toe in that water, got a little taste of that chocolate, I'm liking it, it's fun, and it feels good. And started to recognize the differences. So we've been doing this ever since. So that's been part of the challenge. But the women's liberation movement, or the feminist movement, or whatever, depends on what you call it and who you ask, whether or not it's a good thing or a bad thing. And it's sort of like people will say, it's like, well, you say that like it's a bad thing, but it's not a bad thing. Equal pay kind of makes sense. But there's always been a degree, just like in the early 60s, when African American community and women's movement joined together around oppression. And groups tend to gravitate to each other around oppression. And they stay together for a while, and then at some point what sometimes happens is that one group starts to get where they want to be, and the other group's not getting there quick enough. And so then we have to start splitting out things again, and all of the issues become confused. And then we start breaking out into factions instead of everybody coming back together to say we're all in the same direction, we've all got the same goal in mind, and we're all trying to be what our Constitution said we could be. So there's always going to be people disagreeing about what it means. No different than it's always going to be a challenge, regardless of religious beliefs. Everybody's religious beliefs vary, or whether they're religious or spiritual, they vary. And everybody has an opinion about whose is better than the other one. But again, until we bring it all back together and understand that everybody is unique, we can't give everybody the sense of empowerment that they deserve. Because it's really not for me to give it to somebody. I can't really empower you. You know, you really kind of got to feel it yourself. I can't just go here, because it's coming from in here. But if I don't give you the tools to learn from, and if I don't give you the tools to know that there are things that you can do for yourself, or that you can do for other people, or a frame of reference to work with, then I've not given you the best opportunity to be you. And that's really what the women's movement has been about for a while, is not trying to be better or more or whatever, but simply trying to be, and trying to be equal. So some people will tell you that we're more equal than others, and some will tell you we're already equal, and I think we all know the answer. Okay? So tell you a little bit about sort of the history of where we came from. When we first started, the Y was doing housing, just general housing. And then they were doing housing for women and realizing that these women had left their kids back someplace else with grandma or auntie or somebody. And the kids were kind of being left there and being taken care of, but not educated and not taken care of by mom, and not in an environment that supported mom. So then it became, our YWCA became not just focused on women, but focused on women and children. So we've been doing that for the last 125 years. It's evolved over time, and we were the first sexual assault crisis center in the region. Excuse me. And then in the mid-70s, 80s, opened up the shelters. Excuse me. We have one building that's one of our shelters, the big house. The big house. And we've been in that house for 40 years. Same house. Does anybody know where it is? But you know, it's kind of amazing there's only one person that knows where it is. Because it is confidential. I mean, it is confidential, but at the same time, we've been there for 40 years. How many people have come through the doors? How many women, how many children? How many staff members, how many volunteers, how many service providers, how many police officers, how many? And yet it's still pretty much confidential. But for me, it's not about confidentiality, it's about safety. I really couldn't care less. We could put a big flag in front of the building and keep everybody here because then I keep safe in the building. But that's also the reality of life. We can't keep anybody safe outside of the building, and yet none of us can live in a bubble. And it is really bad to even think we would want to live in a bubble. That's not what life does for us. So,
Confidentiality, I thought that was a good thing.
that is great. So although it is a confidential environment, and we ask you not to disclose where that environment is, or in the case of if you're doing hospital accompaniment, that would include if you saw that client someplace else, you wouldn't say anything to them unless they said something. You're gonna hear all of that stuff, so I don't feel a need to teach you about it. But again, it's less about, oh my God, don't say anything, and more about if we're focused on people's capacity to keep themselves safe, then we're doing the best we can do for the clients who come through the centers. Our model is to expedite the shelter stay and make it as short as we can while moving families into something that is either transitional in nature or more permanent, somewhere in that mix, but not to, it would be our goal not to have anybody have to leave us to go into the shelter, but that does happen. We do have some of the Lifetime movies, and I'd say that meaning some of our story examples would be like Lifetime movies that you've seen, but not every story is a Lifetime movie. Not everyone is that crazy as watching TV to see what happens on TV, but we certainly have them. And I think that that's an important distinction to make, that everybody coming through does not look like everybody else. Here's one of my questions to people who work with our population or when we're talking in public. How many of you would leave the first time somebody hit you? Hands up. I want them up. Because you got to have them up for a minute and you got to keep them up. So not everybody in this room would leave the first time. Okay, but if you got your hand up.
How about if you would leave now, but in the past you did? You know, that's
Okay.
I know better now.
Okay.
There was a time in my life.
All right. Now, what if you were pregnant? Oh, that number went up. You would leave if you were pregnant. That's interesting. But I will say this. What is the #1 cause of death for pregnant women? Homicide. Yeah, that's a little bit of a surpriser for most people. That's a surpriser for most people. But, I mean, we've had babies born in the shelter. But some people, that's the time when they can't leave. What if you got no job? You got no money? What if you got no family and no friends and nobody's anywhere near? What if you don't know? What if you don't know where you're going to go? You haven't got a car. What if I've never laid a hand on you, but I've been very clear? I've been very clear. Leave me and you will die. Leave me and I will kill your parents. Think about leaving me, I will kill your children. Okay? And how many of us are going to run out the door when somebody tells us that? It's hard. So it's really easy for us to ask the question, and when people say, and I love this, I love, whoever came up with it, they should have made sure their name was on it. But it was, in fact, the question was, why didn't she just leave? And the response was, why didn't somebody just tell them to stop beating her? You know what I mean? That's not the message. What's not the message we're given? We're given that what is wrong with her? Well, that's already the message she gets every day that God sends. You know, because I can never lay a hand on you and never put a bruise on you and control every activity you do. And quite frankly, any one of us could do that to somebody else. Any one of us has the ability to. Is it in our nature? I don't, you know, I can't speak to that. We don't know each other well enough for me to start swearing by that. I can't do a reference for you, but what I do know, let me ask you this, is a really unhealthy relationship domestic violence? Fair enough. Domestic violence is a really bad relationship, but a really bad relationship is not necessarily domestic violence. Because two people can be mutually aggressive, mutually unhappy, and it'd be a really crappy relationship, and there's no predominant aggressor. And for our purposes, and as you go forward in the series, what you're going to hear is that for our purposes, we're talking about situations where there's primarily a predominant aggressor. And we don't always know who that is. Sometimes it's whoever gets to the courthouse first. Now that's not fair, and that may not be the truth. But sometimes our victims aren't the first ones to get to the courthouse, and our batterers get to the courthouse and file the papers, and the charges are pressed against the victim. Sometimes that's a really long process to get that turned around. Other times, police or the magistrate's office or somebody will ask enough questions to know how to recognize whether somebody's really the primary aggressor and can catch things before it becomes a problem. But many of our victims have criminal charges sitting out there because somebody else got to the courthouse first. Or, you took my kids, so I'm going to get you for kidnapping and parental interference. Or I'm going to get you for something because you had me locked up. Okay? And how many of y'all have teenagers? Okay. I gotta tell y'all, but I look pretty good for 65, don't you think?
Yeah.
Oh, thank God. Okay. Because y'all look amazing to have children that are this age. But how many of them have cell phones? Yeah, okay. So if you were sitting at the dinner table tonight and you said, we're all going to do something now as a family. From now on, for an hour and a half at dinner time, we're cutting our cell phones off. What do you think they do?
What?
Mine will listen. That's how it is in my house.
I mean, they'd be like, I mean, I've said that to teenagers. I've said that to teenagers, and they've been like, I mean, you would have thought their throats were closing up. You know what I mean? Okay. It has never been easier to stalk. And if you don't, how do you know? Everybody goes, oh yeah, my children tell me everything. Yeah, where are you? Oh, we're just talking. Well, if you love me, you would have called me back by now, because I don't know, what are you doing? Why are you over there? What?
All night long.
Mm-hmm.
It happens every day in high school.
Mm-hmm.
All like that. Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what it is. So I don't have to put a mark on you. I can control what you do. I can tell you that I'm going to tell everybody what sluts you are, because ain't nobody going to know that. So I got this. You do it my way, or I'm going to tell somebody that you got a disease, that you screwed the whole football field, whatever. Football team. I was. You know what I mean? Okay. And this stuff doesn't sound foreign to y'all, does it? Because it all comes back to stuff that's common sense that we really know, but we don't always think about. How many of you know old people? There you go. How many of you know old people that you used to see all the time and now you don't see so much? Do you know that they're okay? Everything going all right in their lives? Because, you know, there's a thing for, like, couples that are older who have, because it was a very different time, right? They didn't talk about it. They didn't tell it. They stayed together. It didn't matter, blah, blah, blah. God knows you didn't talk about it. And she's been battered and abused all her life. Yeah. Until they're old. And he has a stroke. Now he's the one who can't do anything. She said,
Wake up.
you hungry? You hungry? You could sit in that mess that you put in that chair, because I ain't coming back right now. I'm going somewhere. And it's called domestic violence granola. And it reverses. That doesn't mean it always happens, but it is a dynamic. Or it is not reversed, but somebody gets more and more isolated from their children, from their friends, from their family. They don't show up at church anymore. They don't sit on the front porch. They don't do all the things they used to do. Now, just like with the earlier thing about relationships, you cannot assume that a bad relationship is domestic violence. You cannot assume because you don't see those same old people. But the key in the relationship piece is that there's a predominant aggressor and that there's a pattern of behavior. Okay? Those are two of the big things. And as you get through the series, the section on sort of DB 101, the definition, you'll get more discussion about what is that definition. But it's really primarily about those two things. It's about where there's a pattern and not just severity. It's more about, okay, don't let me keep going on that. I don't need to ramble. Has what I've said so far made enough sense?
Yeah, 14-year-old and a 10-year-old almost this month. And I love health and nutrition. I work from home. My passion is that, just helping people to get healthier. And I am also a domestic violence survivor. My first husband was very abusive, and I didn't have any support. I didn't have anybody to tell me that there were resources or anything like that. And the people that I did turn to told me that I should basically put up with it, you know, that that's what men do, and that was the advice that I got. And so, thank God, God came into my life, restored me, and everything has changed, and He puts people in my path that have been in that situation, and I figured if He put me through it, then there must be a reason why. And so, I just want to help maybe be a support, at least point somebody to the right direction and let them know that they don't have to go through that. And I remarried, I have a wonderful husband, and you know, it's amazing what life can be like, you know, it should be like. So
Congratulations to you.
My name is Katie Wagan. I'm usually very sociable. I just recently was hearing my left ear, so I can only like smile and nod. So usually I really am a people person. Just make sure you catch me on this ear. But I'm a chaplain at MCB. And I heard about our heart program through one of our forensic nurses. And I was talking with him just because as a chaplain, I'm very passionate about, helping people, especially in times of crises. And what I noticed when I first began is that we, as chaplains, were called down to the emergency room for traumas and etc. But I noticed that we were never called down for any kind of sexual or physical assault. And that really bothered me, but once I found out that we did have people who were advocates for women and men who go through those ordeals, it was something that has been a passion of mine for a long time and something that I want to be involved in.
Do we need to move your chair?
Do you want me to move? And I'm generally a big mouth broad, and most people can hear me.
I can hear you.
Yeah, see. But if you can't, and if I blow your ears out, just say so and I'll adjust accordingly, okay?
Thank you.
And thank you. I think we got everybody. Okay, what about you?
Okay.
Maybe you should say who you are.
I'll say who I am. I've thankfully had the chance to meet most of you guys, not everybody, but I'm Lee Busby. So I recently joined the YWCA a little over 2 months ago as a public outreach specialist, and so volunteer management is one of my responsibilities, which I'm very excited about, and really glad that everyone's here. I think we have a great group, and everyone showed up. I'm so excited.
We'll make sure there's more room.
Yeah, I don't think I counted chairs very well. I knew how many people were coming, and there was only one surprise, and yeah, I didn't mean to.
I know.
Just as they get to know you, we thought we'd be really close today.
It's awesome. If you're us, it's awesome.
And so I was really excited that I got the opportunity to work here because I definitely am very passionate about children, which is one aspect of what the YWCA supports, but also women, which is another area. But I think, it's just an amazing mission, and to be able to support that in a number of different ways, and actually get to support the whole organization, which not everybody does, is something that I'm really excited to be part of. So, yeah, that's why I'm here. I'm actually going to be here because I wanted to attend the training since I have just started, so I'll be here every night. So yeah, and so the trainer will change a little bit. There are some people that are going to train multiple nights, but I should always be here, so you can always ask questions.
And it's probably, Johnny, you mentioned, and I think who else, but if you are, if you're a recent hire to do relief work or anything like that, are you the only one tonight? Or is everybody else volunteer at this point?
Yeah.
Okay, well, and I will also tell you, just so you know, relief workers are staff that work occasional shifts in our shelter. And during the evenings and overnights and on the weekends, that person is there at the shelter, and they also answer the hotline. Our hotline is also here during the day, Monday through Friday. But we do hire part-time people who are more like on an on-call list. It's the same way that you're on-call volunteers. It's sort of like if you want to also get paid, then you say, I'd like to occasionally do some relief work and pay me to work a shift. We couldn't pay you to work an R-Heart shift. That's a volunteer piece of your schedule. If R-Heart's one of the things that you want to do. But if that is something you want to do and are willing to do, and you understand that there's no preconceived promise of a minimum number of hours, as long as you understand that and understand that it's just sort of a relief backup kind of call, then that's something that you can do. If you let us know that, we'll get you hooked up and get you hired.